Good afternoon from Sacred Space at Titania's Realm. We accidentally got cut off. I'm not sure why. My laptop definitely has a genie in it. Causes me all sorts of problems. But we were just about to begin reading some lovely stories instead of my tumescent dark humour. So I'll just remind you that today is the 4th of March 2025. The time is currently 12:21 p.m. and the cyclone is incoming and all will be well, people of Earth. Some of us might sustain a fair bit of damage, but I am a bit worried about my car because I've got no cover for my car. So that's a bit frightening, but I'm not the only one in that position, so I will just have to free ball and free fall with the rest of humanity and hope to the gods that there's no significant damage. Right. How the donkey became. There was one creature that never seemed to change at all. This didn't worry him though. He hated the thought of becoming any single creature. Oh no, he wanted to become all creatures together, all at once. He used to practice them all in turn. First a lion, then an eagle, then a bull, then a cockatoo, and so on. 5 minutes each. That's a lot of transmutation, people of Earth. He was a strange-looking beast in those days, a kind of no shape in particular. He had legs, sure enough, and eyes and ears and all the rest, but there was something vague about him. He really did look as if he might suddenly turn into anything. He was called Donkey, which in the language of that time meant unable to stick to one thing. You'll never become anything, the other creatures said, until you stick to one thing, and that thing alone. Become a lion with us, the lion becomers said. You're so good at lioning, it's a pity to waste your time eagling. And the eagle said, never mind lioning. You should concentrate on becoming an eagle. You have a gift for it. All the different creatures spoke to him in this way, which made him very proud. So proud, in fact, that he became boastful. I'm going to be every kind, Donkey cried, kicking up his heels. I'm going to be a lionorangutangadinf. Lionorangutangadinf. Sounds very complicated to me. Also hard to pronounce. Couldn't he just have picked something simple to pronounce? Why are they all grinding my gears? But never mind. Half the day he spent on a high exposed part of the play, practicing it as creatures where everyone could see him. The other half he spent sleeping in the long grass. I'm growing so fast, he used to say. I need all the sleep I can get. But Donkey had a secret worry. He had no means of earning his living. He couldn't earn his living as a lion, not when he only practiced at lion 5 minutes a day. He couldn't earn his living as any other creature either, for the same reason. So he had to beg. When you see me grow up into a lion or orangutan div, he said, as he begged a mouthful of fish from Otter, you'll be glad you helped me when I was only learning. And he went off, kicking up his heels. Before long, the animals grew tired of his begging. It took them all day to find food enough for themselves. So whenever Donkey came up to them to beg, they began to tease him. What? They cried. Aren't you the finest, greatest creature in the world yet? What have you been doing with your time? This made Donkey furious. He galloped off to a high hill, and there he sat, brooding. The trouble is, he said, there's no place among these creatures for somebody with real ambition. But one day I'll make them stare. I'll be a better lion than a lion, a better eagle than eagle, and a better kangaroo than kangaroo. And all at the same time. Then they'll be sorry. All the same. He wished he could earn his living without having to beg. As he sat, he heard a long sigh. He looked around. He hadn't noticed that he was so near Man's farm. He looked over the fence and saw Man sitting beside a well with his head resting in his hands. As he looked, Man gave another sigh. What's the matter? Asked Donkey. Man looked up. I'm weary, he said. Drawing water from this well is hard work. Hard? Donkey cried. If it's strength you're wanting, here I am. I'm the strongest creature on these plains. But still not strong enough to draw water, sighed Man. Just watch this. Donkey marched across, took hold of the long pole that stuck out over the well, and began to drag it around. He had often seen Man doing this, so he knew how. Water gushed out of a pipe onto Man's field of corn. Wonderful, cried Man. Wonderful. Donkey flattened back his ears and pulled all the harder. Man danced around him, crying, You're a marvel. Oh, what I wouldn't give to have you working for me. As he said that, Donkey got an idea. He stopped. If you'll give me food, he said, I'll do this every day for you. It's a bargain, said Man. So Donkey started to work for Man. Only a little bit each morning, mind you. He still spent most of the day out on the plains, practicing at all his creatures. Then he retired early to sleep in the little shed that Man had made for him. It was dark, out of the wind, and the floor was covered with deep straw. Lovely. There he would lie till it was time for work next morning. One day, Man said to him, If you'll work twice as long for me, I'll give you twice as much food. Donkey thought. Twice as much food means twice as much strength. And if I'm going to be a lion-o tang a dimp, wow, I shall need all the strength that's going. So he agreed to work twice as long. Next day, Man asked him the same again. Donkey agreed, and the next day, and again Donkey agreed. He was now working from dawn to dusk. But the pile of food that Man gave him at the day's end, well, after eating it, Donkey could do nothing but lie down on his straw and snore. After about a week of this, he suddenly thought, here I am, being gloriously fed, getting stronger and stronger, but I never have time to practice at my creatures. How can I hope to become a lion-o-dimp if I never practice my creatures? It's true. To gain mastery in any ability you need practice, resilience, repetition, over and over and over again until you have muscle memory and it all becomes second nature. So what did he do? He couldn't very well practice while he was working. The sight and sound of it would have terrified Man, and Donkey didn't want to lose his job. So he did the only thing he could. He began to practice in his head. Soon he got to be wonderfully good at this. He could fancy himself any creature he wished. A mountain goat, for instance, leaping among the clouds from crag to crag, or a salmon climbing a fierce, swift torrent for hours at a time, all in his head. He would quite forget that he was only walking round a well. Once or twice Man removed him from the well and set him to draw a plough, but Donkey was so absorbed in practising at his creatures inside his head that he forgot to turn at the end of the furrow. He went ploughing straight on through the hedge and into the next field. After this, Man never asked him to do anything but walk around the well, and Donkey was quite contented. So it went on for several years, and Donkey fancied that he was becoming more and more skillful in his creatures. I mustn't be in too great a hurry, he said to himself. I want to be better at everything than every other creature. So a little more practice won't hurt. So he went on, always staying on with Man for just a little bit more practice inside his head. Soon, he kept saying, soon I shall be perfect. At last it seemed to Donkey he was nearly perfect. A few more days, just a few more days. Then he would burst out onto the plains, the first lion-o-dimp. Within 3 days, perhaps even within 2, the animals would crown him their king. He was sure of that. Just as he was thinking these lovely thoughts, he heard a sudden cry. He looked up and saw a man running towards his house, his arms in the air. At the same time, over the high fence came Lion. Donkey stood and watched Lion out of the corner of his eye. He tilted one forefoot carelessly. Lion stared at him. At last, making his voice sound as friendly as he could, Donkey said, "My word, Lion Becomer, you've changed. Are you Lion yet?" Lion turned away from him without a word and walked up the path. When he reached the man's house, he stood up on his hind legs and, lifting one paw like a lion in a coat of arms, began to beat upon the door. "Throw out your wife and children, man," he roared. The man was crouching under the table inside the house, trembling all over, not daring to breathe. Finally, Lion got tired of beating the door, which was of thick wood and studded with big bolts. He turned round and began to sniff among the outhouses and gardens. He came to Donkey again, who was still propped idly on one foreleg beside the well. "Hello again, Lion," said Donkey, and he let his voice be ever such a little bit scornful. "Your hunting isn't so good, is it? I think I could give you a lesson or two in lioning." Lion stared, amazed. "Now," thought Donkey, "now to reveal my true self. Now to reveal what I have made myself after all these years of hard practice." And he gave a great leap and roared. "See," he cried, "this is the way." And again he leapt and roared, leapt and roared. He became so taken up with his lioning that he completely forgot about Lion. Now it was years since Donkey had actually tried to leap or roar. He was far too stiff from his years of hard work to leap, and his voice had become stiff as his muscles. So though it seemed to him he was doing a wonderful lion, he was really only kicking out his heels stiffly and sending up a harsh bray. But he was delighted with himself. He went on leaping and roaring, as he thought, leaping and roaring, so that his harness clattered, the long pole bounced and banged, and Lion screwed up his eyes in the dust from the kicking out feet. At last, the Lion could stand it no longer. He raised his paw and with one blow knocked Donkey clean into the well. He then jumped over the fence and returned to his wife, who was waiting on the skyline. Poor donkey! When man hauled him out of the well, he was in a sorry state. But he was a wiser donkey. That night he ate his oats and lay down with a new feeling. No more lion or orangutan for him. No more pretending to be every creature. It's best to face the truth, he said to himself. And the truth is, I'm neither a lion nor an eagle. I am a well-fed, comfortable, hard-working donkey. He could hear the lions roaring hungrily out on the plains, and he thought of the antelopes running hither and thither, looking for a safe corner and a place out of the wind. He pushed his head under the warm straw and smiled into the darkness and fell into a deep sleep. Just going to go and blow my nose with the vestiges of my toilet paper. Right, people of Earth, mullein tea drives everything out of you. It's brilliant bloody stuff. Right, excuse me. Some sesame snacks. All the time to catch a cold. It's just insane, my timing. But, you know, I must have got myself run down, too much dancing, trying to heal this bloody wound, which is still kind of ouchies at times. And the body got, resistance got low, so the body decided to throw an epic Tanya tantrum as it does. And just go with the flow, babies, as I've done every day of my life. Right, the next story. Just going to chew. The sun's come out again. You wouldn't think we're about to have a massive cyclone, would you? It's odd, people of Earth. Very odd. How the hare became. Now, Hare was a real dandy. He was about the vainest creature on the whole earth. Every morning he spent 1 hour smartening his fur, another hour smoothing his whiskers, and another cleaning his paws. Then the rest of the day he strutted up and down, admiring his shadow and saying, "How handsome am I? How amazingly handsome. Surely some great princess will want to marry me soon." It's ambitious for a hare. I'm sure by princess he means a hare princess, not a human princess, because that would be weird, people are there. Don't punch that far above your weight, like know your place in the known cosmos. Just saying. The other creatures grew so tired of his vain ways that they decided to teach him a lesson. Now they knew that he would believe any story so long as it made him think he was handsome. So this is what they did. One morning, Gazelle went up to Hare and said, "Good morning, Hare. How handsome you look. No wonder we've been hearing such stories about you." "Stories?" asked Hare. "What stories?" "Haven't you heard the news?" cried Gazelle. "It's about you." "News? News? What news?" cried Hare, jumping up and down in excitement. "Why, the moon wants to marry you," said Gazelle. "The beautiful moon, the queen of the night sky. She wants to marry you because she says you're the handsomest creature in the whole world. Oh yes, you should just have heard a few of the things she was saying about you last night." "Such as?" cried Hare. "Such as?" Could hardly wait to hear what fine things Moon had said about him. "Never mind now," said Gazelle, "but she'll be walking up that hill tonight, and if you want to marry her, you're to be there to meet her. Lucky man." Here he is. Gazelle pointed to a hill in the eastern skyline. It was not yet midday, but Hare was up on top of that hill in one flash, looking down eagerly on the other side. There was no sign of a palace anywhere where the moon might live. He could see nothing but plains rolling up to the further skyline. He sat down to wait, getting up every few minutes to take another look round. He certainly was excited. At last the sky grew dark and a few stars lit up. Hare began to strut about so that the moon should see what a fine figure of a creature was waiting for her. He looked first down one side of the hill, then down the other, but she was still nowhere in sight. Suddenly he saw her, but not coming up his hill. No, excuse me. There was a black hill on the skyline, much farther to the east. She was just peeping silver over the top of that. "Ah!" cried Hare. "I've been waiting on the wrong hill. I'll miss her if I don't hurry." He set off towards her at a run. How he ran! Down into the dark valley and up the hill to the top. But what a surprise he got there! The moon had gone. Ahead of him, across another valley, was another skyline, another black hill. And that was the hill the moon was climbing. "Wait for me! Wait!" Hare cried, and set off again down into the valley. When he got to the top of that hill, he groaned. And no wonder. Far ahead of him was another dark skyline and another hill, and on top of that hill was the moon, standing tiptoe, ready to fly off up the sky. Without a pause, he set off again. His paws were like wings. He ran on the tops of the grass, he ran so fast. By the time he got to the top of this hill, he saw he was too late. The moon was well up into the sky above him. "I've missed her," he cried. "I'm too late. Oh, what will she think of me?" And he began leaping up towards her, calling, "Moon, moon, I'm here. I've come to marry you." But she sailed on up the black sky, round and bright, much too far away to hear. Hare jumped a somersault in pure vexation. Then he began to listen. He stretched up his ears. Perhaps she was saying terrible things about him, or perhaps, yes, perhaps flattering things. Perhaps she wanted to marry him much too much ever to think badly of him. After all, he was so handsome. All that night he gazed up at the moon and listened. Every minute she seemed more and more beautiful. He dreamed how it would be living in her palace. He would become a king, of course, if she were a queen. All at once he noticed that she was beginning to come down to the other side of the house, towards a black hill in the west. "This time I'll be waiting for her," he cried, and set off. But it was just the same. When he got to the top of the hill, she was no longer there, but on the farther hill. And when he got to the top of that, she was on the next. And when he got to that, she had gone down behind the farthest hills. Hare was furious with himself. "It's my own fault," he cried. "It's because I'm so slow. I must be there on time then I shan't have to run after her. To miss the chance of marrying the moon and becoming a king, all out of pure slowness. That day he told the animals that he was courting the moon, but that the marriage day was not fixed yet. He strutted in front of them and stroked his fur. After all, he was the creature who was going to marry the moon. He was so busy being vain, he never noticed how the other creatures smiled as they turned away. Hare had fallen for their trick completely. That night, Hare was out early, but it was just the same. Again he found himself waiting on the wrong hill. The moon came over the black crest of a hill in the skyline far to the east of him. Excuse me, dear goddess. Hill by hill, he chased her into the east over 4 hills, but at last she was alone in the sky above him. Then, no matter how he leapt and called after her, she went sailing on up the sky. So he sat and listened to hear what she was saying about him. He could hear nothing. Her voice is so soft, Hare told himself. The leaves of mullein tea are just plain nasty. They're all prickly and you have to be careful because they can make me want to vomit. But anyway, Mama Two will drive that illness out. She will drive that illness out. I should have started it already yesterday when I felt it coming on. Anyway. He set off in good time for the hill in the west, where she had gone down the night before, but again he seemed to have misjudged it. She came down on the hilly skyline that was further again to the west of him, and again he was too late. Oh, how he longed to marry the moon. Night after night he waited for her, but never once could he hit on the right hill. Poor Hare! He didn't know that when the moon seemed to be rising from the nearest hill in the east, or falling onto the nearest hill in the west, she was really rising and falling over the far, far edge of the world, beyond all hills. Such a trick the creatures had played on him, saying the moon wanted to marry him. But he didn't give up. Soon he began to change. With endlessly gazing at the moon, he began to get moonlight in his eyes, giving him a wild, startled look. And with racing from hill to hill, he grew to be a wonderful runner. Especially up the hills, he just shot up them. And from leaping to reach her when he was too late, he came to be a great leaper. And from listening and listening all through the night for what the moon was saying high in the sky, he got his long, long ears. Right, I'm going to continue with 2 more stories. I'm just going to go and blow my nose again. Be right back. I had some truck or something. What's today? Tuesday, isn't it? Yes. Alright, I think it's the law mowing, the council mowing hands, maybe, I don't know. Right, where were we, people there? How the elephant became. The unhappiest of all the creatures was Bombo. Bombo didn't know what to become. At one time, he thought he might make a fairly good horse. At another time, he thought that perhaps he was meant to be a kind of bull, but it was no good. Not only the horses, but all the other creatures too, gathered to laugh at him when he tried to be a horse. And when he tried to be a bull, the bulls just walked away, shaking their heads. Be yourself, they all said. Bombo sighed. That's all he ever heard. Be yourself, be yourself. What was himself? That's what he wanted to know. So most of the time he just stood with sad eyes, letting the wind blow his ears this way and that, while the other creatures raced round him and above him, perfecting themselves. I'm just stupid, he said to himself. Just stupid and slow, and I shall never become anything. That was his main trouble, he felt sure. He was much too slow and clumsy and so big. None of the other creatures were anywhere near so big. He searched hard to find another creature as big as he was, but there was not one. This made him feel all the more silly and in the way. But this was not all. He had great ears that flapped and hung and a long, long nose. I won't say it. I'll be good, I promise. His nose was useful. He could pick things up with it, but none of the other creatures had a nose anything like it. They all had small, neat noses. And he laughed at this. In fact, with that and his ears and his long, white, sticking out tusks, he was a sight. As he stood, there was a sudden thunder of hooves. Bombo looked up in alarm. "Aside, aside, aside," roared a huge voice. "We're going down to drink." Bombo managed to force his way forwards into a painful clump of thorn bushes, just in time to let Buffalo charge past with all his family. Their long black bodies shone, their curved horns tossed, their tails screwed and curled as they pounded down towards the water in a cloud of dust. The earth shook under them. "There's no doubt," said Bombo, "who they are. If only I could be as sure of what I am as Buffalo is of what he is." You notice that a lot of these stories the theme is about identity and coming home to yourself and your own personhood, or in this case each particular animal owning their own form and chosen shape and mentality. This would have been something he was struggling with when he was writing this book. Then he pulled himself together. "To be myself," he said aloud, "I shall have to do something that no other creature does." Lion roars and pounces, and buffalo charges up and down, bellowing. Each of these creatures does something that no other creature does. So, what shall I do? He thought hard for a minute. Then he lay down, rolled over onto his back, and waved his four great legs in the air. After that, he stood on his head and lifted his hind legs straight up as if he were going to sunburn the soles of his feet. I'm always grateful when they mow the council verge. The inside soon needs doing too, but I guess can wait till after the cyclone's been and gone and done its thing. From this position, he lowered himself back onto his 4 feet, stood up and looked round. The others should soon get to know me by that, he thought. Nobody was in sight, so he waited until a pack of wolves appeared on the horizon. Then he began again. Onto his back, his legs in the air, then onto his head, and his hind legs straight up. "Phew," he grunted as he lowered himself. "I shall need some practice before I can keep this up for long." When he stood up and looked around him the second time, he got a shock. All the animals were round him in a ring, rolling on their sides with laughter. "Do it again! Oh, do it again!" they were crying as they rolled and laughed. "Do it again! Oh, I shall die with laughter! Oh, my sides, my sides!" Bombo stared at them in horror. After a few minutes, the laughter died down. "Come on," roared Lion. "Do it again and make us laugh. You look so silly when you do it." But Bombo just stood. This was much worse than imitating some other animal. He had never made them laugh so much before. He sat down and pretended to be inspecting one of his feet, as if he were alone, and one by one, now that there was nothing to laugh at, the other animals walked away, still chuckling over what they had seen. "Next show, same time tomorrow," shouted Fox, and they all burst out laughing again. Bombo sat, playing with his foot, letting the tears trickle down his long nose. Well, he'd had enough. He'd tried to be himself, and all the animals had laughed at him. That night, he waded out to a small island in the middle of the great river that ran through the forest, and there, from then on, Bombo lived alone, seen by nobody but the little birds and a few beetles. One night, many years later, Parrot suddenly screamed and flew up into the air above the trees. All his feathers were singed. The forest was on fire. Within a few minutes the animals were running for their lives. Jaguar, wolf, stag, cow, bear, sheep, cockerel, mouse, giraffe, all were running side by side and jumping over each other to get away from the flames. Behind them, the fire came through the treetops like a terrific red wind. Oh dear, our houses, our children, cried the animals. Lion and buffalo were running along with the rest. The fire will go as far as the forest goes, and the forest goes on forever, they cried, and ran with sparks falling into their hair. On and on they ran, hour after hour, and all they could hear was the thunder of the fire at their tails. On into the middle of the next day, and still they were running. At last they came to the wide, deep, swift river. They could go no further. Behind them the fire boomed as it leapt from tree to tree. Smoke lay so thickly over the forest and the river that the sun could not be seen. The animals floundered in the shallows at the river's edge, trampling the banks to mud, treading on each other, coughing and sneezing in the white ashes that were falling thicker than thick snow out of the cloud of smoke. Fox sat on sheep and sheep sat on rhinoceros. They all set up a terrible wailing, roaring, crying, howling, moaning sound. It seemed like the end of the animals. The fire came nearer, bending over them like a thundering roof, while the black river swirled and rumbled beside them. Out on his island stood Bombo, admiring the fire, which made a fine sight through the smoke with its high spikes of red flame. He knew he was quite safe on his island. The fire couldn't cross that great stretch of water very easily. At first He didn't see the animals crowding low by the edge of the water. The smoke and ash were too thick in the air. But soon he heard them. He recognized Lion's voice shouting, "Keep ducking yourselves in the water. Keep your fur wet, and the sparks will not burn you." And the voice of Sheep crying, "If we duck ourselves, we're swept away by the river." And the other creatures, gnu, ferret, cobra, partridge, crying, "We must drown or burn. Goodbye, brothers and sisters." It certainly did seem like the end of the animals. Without a pause, Bombo pushed his way into the water. The river was deep, the current heavy and fierce, but Bombo's legs were both long and strong. Burnt trees that had fallen into the river higher up and were drifting down banged against him, but he hardly felt them. In a few minutes, he was coming up into shallow water towards the animals. He was almost too late. The flames were forcing them step by step into the river where the current was snatching them away. Lion was sitting on buffalo, wolf was sitting on lion, wildcat on wolf, badger on wildcat, cockerel on badger, rat on cockerel, weasel on rat, lizard on weasel, tree creeper on lizard, harvest mouse on tree creeper, beetle on harvest mouse, wasp on beetle, and on top of wasp, ant, gazing at the raging flames through his spectacles and covering his ears from their roar. The thought of an ant wearing spectacles rather amuses me. Oh well, even the smallest creature can change the course of the world. When the animals saw Bombo looming through the smoke, a great shout went up. "It's Bombo! It's Bombo!" All the animals took up the cry. "Bombo! Bombo!" Bombo kept coming closer. As he came, he sucked up water in his long, silly nose and squirted it over his back to protect himself from the heat and the sparks. Then, with the same long, silly nose, he reached out and began to pick up the animals. One by one. And seat them on his back. "Take us!" cried Mole. "Take us!" cried Monkey. He loaded his back with the creatures that had hooves and big feet. Then he told the little clinging things to cling on to the great folds of his ears. Soon he had every single creature aboard. Then he turned and began to wade back across the river, carrying all the animals of the forest towards safety. Once they were safe on the island, they danced for joy. Then they sat down to watch the fire. Suddenly Mouse gave a shout. "Look! The wind is bringing sparks across the river. The sparks are blowing into the island trees. We shall burn here too." As he spoke, one of the trees on the edge of the island crackled into flame. The animals set up a great cry and began to run in all directions. "Help! Help! Help! We shall burn here too!" But Bombo was ready. He put those long, silly tusks of his, that he had once been so ashamed of, under the roots of the burning tree and heaved it into the river. He threw every tree into the river till the island was bare. The sparks now fell on the bare, torn ground, where the animals trod them out easily. Bombo had saved them again. Next morning, the fire had dried out at the river's edge. The animals on the island looked across at the smoking, blackened plain where the forest had been. Then they looked round for Bombo. He was nowhere to be seen. "Bombo!" they shouted. "Bombo!" and listened to the echo. But he had gone. He is still very hard to find. Though he is huge and strong, he is very quiet. But what did become of him in the end? Where is he now? Ask any of the animals, and they will tell you. Though he is shy, he is the strongest, the cleverest, and the kindest of all the animals. He can carry anything, and he can push anything down. He can pick you up in his nose and wave you in the air. We would make him our king if we could get him to wear a crown. The end. Right. That is the end of book 1. And then we go on to book 2, which I think, for continuity's sake and coherence sake and cohesion's sake and because I'm not all that well, beautiful people of planet Earth and all interdimensional entities. The sun's come out, very odd weather for a cyclone. I wonder if they're just exaggerating and scaremongering. Because it occurred to me when we mentioned about Ant needing spectacles. When there's an epic big storm coming, I usually have ants running all over my kitchen benches trying to get to higher ground or move their nests or their eggs up higher, and that hasn't happened. So I'm not saying that we're not getting a cyclone and that some people might not be badly hit with it, but I don't think it's coming to my area. We might just get some heavy winds and some heavy rain, and just might be a non-event. But because I don't know, can't be 100% sure, I'll go and fill my bath with water just in case. And like a good little Girl Scout, although I was never a member of that sorority, I'll be prepared. Anyway, bye for now, planet Earth and Queenslanders and New South Welshmen. Stay safe, stay happy, stay cool till after school. It's 30 degrees at the moment. Stay grounded in your reality, and remember, never let the bastards grind you down. Hold your line and weather all storms that come your way. You can do it. We've all been doing it for a very, very long time. Although I do worry about the people, in Lismore areas and down that area, because they've been smashed in recent years, absolutely smashed. And Really hope they don't get any more flooding again. It's too much. So my thoughts and prayers go out to you, that may you be protected in this difficult and fraught time. Amen, Vasila. So bye for now. Take good care. Be of good cheer.